leading the real world, moment by moment, choice by choice. This is where leadership meets performance, grounded, practical, so you can step in and show up on purpose every day.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on the Clear Performance Coaching Podcast. My name is Rick Timlick.
I'm Kent Vaughn.
I'm Sam Bracken.
This podcast is all about taking ordinary, helping them become great coaches who create extraordinary results. And today we're going to kind of get into accountability. We have two cards, accountability trackers and accountability clear meetings. And so we want to dive into really all about accountability, where it shows up, how it shapes, etc. And if I just frame this, the last time we talked about making commitments and building your huddle. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most commitments die quietly between meetings. I don't believe anybody breaks them on purpose. They just kind of fade away. So today is about the two tools that keep them alive, the trackers and the clear meetings. Sam, when you talked about the trackers and you started to design clear accountability trackers, what was the problem you're trying to solve?
Well, people they don't keep their and we like to say everybody counts and everybody is counting. And what are they counting? Well, they're counting their commitments and their promises. Right? What did you say you're going to do? Well, did you do it? But it's funny because I've been studying change and what makes people change, organizational change, personal change, for 30 years. And I don't care what change model you look at. I don't care if you look at Cotter's work or whoever the profound change philosophers are in the world. Every single model has accountability. And you just don't change without accountability. And that couples with reflection and accountability. So if you want to make progress, you got to track your progress. Otherwise, you don't make progress. And I don't know a better way to do that except by keeping score and then having a meeting around the scoreboard. And I know that's both the cards we're talking about, but this notion of accountability, both personal accountability and team and interpersonal accountability, your team accountability, your work team, your group, or your department, everybody has something they're working on. And as long as you get alignment, if you have everything aligned, then it's just accountability. And there's nothing more powerful than the check-in and the check-out, right? So you can do that daily or weekly or monthly.
Kent, you've been in manufacturing for decades, inside and helping. One of the things that I can hear our audience wonder is, what's the difference between accountability and surveillance?
Well, that's such a great question. Surveillance is you're watching, you're looking for mistakes or if they're doing it right. And that's not necessarily bad, but that doesn't seem like a partner, right? That doesn't seem like a partner at all. Accountability is where we ask people, so how are you going to handle this? What are you going to do about this? How would you solve this? In fact, it's interesting how leaders just a few weeks ago say, I've completely changed, Kent, since you've been coaching me about this, because I used to, people come to me with a problem or an issue, and I would say, I would do this, this, or this. And you kept saying, stop telling them, start asking them. And so he said, I've been doing that for the last month. It's been amazing the difference. When someone comes to me with a problem and I say to them, well, you're close to it. Deming's old thinking that the person that knows the most is the person standing within 12 feet of the job. So he said, hey, you're the one standing within 12 feet of the job. What do you think? And they're like, you want to know what I think? He said, yeah, what do you think? He said, it was amazing the ideas I got from people when I said, hey, what do you think you ought to do about it? And then I follow up with them how they did with the thing they said they would do. He said it's been fundamentally different than when I told them, and then I followed them up with the thing I told them to do, right? And we're completely flipping it on its here. This idea of co-creating, and they're making a commitment around it, and then you follow up. And in the manufacturing world, you're out on the plant floor, and in healthcare, you're out walking the hospital. You may not be able to write everything down, right? But at least they're making a commitment, you're following up. That's really what we're talking about, I think, where you're just following up with how they're doing with what they said they were going to do, right? And the value of that is incalculable. And in the manufacturing world and the healthcare world, and so many, it's every single day, all day, right? Some organizations, they do it on a weekly basis. But if we can do that on a daily basis, how are you doing with this? What are you seeing? How would you solve that? It doesn't mean we don't offer insight and advice, but we do that after we've, pushed on them to give us their ideas and their insight and gotten some other people involved. Then we give our advice if needed. I love what Sam says. If we talk about something and Sam will say, well, that's a prototype. And I love that he says that all the time. If you give an idea, he says, that's a good prototype. And meaning there are other prototypes. So let's talk about a lot of prototypes and see what makes the most sense. I don't know if this is answering what you're thinking. That's kind of what comes to my mind.
Absolutely.
As you talk, Kent, I really think contextually we need to understand that we need to be clear on the goal, right? We need to have a real clear goal.
Yes.
We need to be clear on the lever or the root behavior that produces the goal. We need to be all in with engagement in our huddles, right? And then we need to track it. So you need a personal scoreboard and a team scoreboard with the goal in clear view. If it's a team board, you need the team's goal at the top and how you're pacing on that goal, whether you're behind or ahead. And then each individual on the team, what's their goal for the week? And it's broken down by the day. And what commitments are they making? What's the root behavior that they're going to commit to every day to accomplish the goal? And that board needs to be out and analog where everybody can see it. It needs to be simple. It needs to be accurate and up to date. And people need to buy into it. We say, let the team create the board. And then it's their board and they're connected to it. But if you don't track the progress, you lose the power of what a board can do or what accountability can do, because a board is just a mechanism for accountability. And the key here is not to just look at the numbers. It's to look beyond the numbers to see where people are succeeding and failing. Because if you look beyond the numbers and you see someone doing the activity and still not getting the results, then you in real time can focus on that person and give them the support that they need, right? And you take advantage of what we talked about last week in last week's podcast of the complementary nature of helping one another and trusting one another to accomplish your objectives, right? So there's nothing quite like it. If you make the board digital, it lives in the ethos. It's not out there. So we just have found that a simple analog board tracking your progress makes all the difference. And a weekly meeting around the board to see how you're doing with the goal chunked down and everybody clear on what they need to accomplish really helps morale. It really helps people get excited and engaged. And if you do that, it really, really helps. And if you don't, people are just forget about it. They forget about the goal. And then you can use the daily check-ins and checkouts to make sure people are on progress, make sure people are making progress. But that weekly meeting where you say, here's what I did last week. Here's the result. And that result was either good or bad. If it was bad, here's what I learned about it. And here are the changes I'm making because of it. And here's my commitment for next week. And you do it in front of your peers. The power of that is remarkable.
You know what? When you say board, Sam, I just want to be clear that everyone knows we're talking about scoreboards, right? And there's no organization I know of that doesn't have scoreboards. The problem is the scoreboards always measure the result, the output. And what we're talking here is we need to be looking at what are the inputs, what are the actions people are taking, what are the behaviors they are exhibiting that's getting that output. Otherwise, it's just like, well, I don't know. It's like we got lucky. Well, look, if you're running on luck, that ain't a strategy, baby. Luck is not a strategy. Yeah. And if all you're doing is outputs and results, you're relying on luck. We need to back up, which is what you're talking about, to look at what are the inputs, what are the things people are doing or not doing. They're getting those inputs. Those
you're right on target here. It's the root behavior. It's predictive. The root behavior is predictive of the results. If you're looking at lag measures, you're driving forward, look rearview mirror. Like you're not. It's too late. It's too late to win. Lag measures are always after the fact measures. So your scoreboards need to have a predictive element. Yeah. And that's where the root behavior comes in. A real-time root behavior that's going to be us in the future. That's what makes it. That's one of the key components of a successful board. It has the goal and it has the root behavior, and it's every single day, right? And then it's collectively measured on the week-to-week basis, and it's evaluated by a month. and then you're recalibrating every month to move forward the next month.
There's one thing you said that I really loved. First off, you said simply measuring a behavior changes it. When we put a spotlight on, we see behavior improve it. Here's what I really like that you said, though, is that the tracker isn't the record keeper. It's really the intervention around that. Like, we expected this to happen and it didn't. Can we pause and look at why? I think that's a really powerful principle.
Go ahead, Sam.
It makes all the difference because the real power of a board is in the peer-to-peer pressure with your teammates to say better than that. Like, I know you, because boss to subordinate pressure is not as good or as effective.
Yeah. In manufacturing, we used to call these run charts. You could see how the process was running effectively. And when it got, below the goals or the threshold, then there would be that intervention. And it's kind of the same thing around our own human behavior, right? Like, I want to do these things. How am I doing?
Yeah, we call them minimum standards. Like root behavior. Let's say you're trying to get a sales quote. You're trying to get a sales revenue number, right? And you know that the number of calls you make create a call. I mean, a sales pitch and the pitch close, right? And the root behavior are the calls, right? But you set minimum standards. The team sets minimum standards. We're going to do 40 calls a day to get 10 appointments a week so that we can sell 5 deals a week so we can make X amount of money. But the focus is not on the goal. That's in the back of the mind. But what's in the front of the mind is the root behavior, the minimum standard. Saban talks about this a lot, Alabama's legendary football coach. He talks about creating a minimum standard, minimum expectation for everyone. Everyone needs a minimum expectation, minimum standard. And when you fall below the standard, there's pressure to change to get above the standard.
Yeah.
Pressure.
There was somebody that did a study of thousands of work days, just thousands. And the single biggest driver of motivation and positive inner work, and you say this a lot, Sam, was visible progress on meaningful work. Trackers manufacture that visibility. I'll just share a couple of other things that I find fascinating. Like, I love this topic of tracking and not as policing, but actually as a helpful thing. So if we think of dopamine and prediction, like what wires us to want to do this? And our reward system fires on anticipated progress, not just completion. Like, as I get nearer to the goal, dopamine starts to fire. It's not when I've crossed the finish line. Checking a box, that's a genuine micro reward. That's why people love those, like, to check through. I did. And they can check it off and feel good about what they checked off.
Rick, I was thinking about one of your clients, one of the largest railroad maintenance companies in the world. And you've been working with them for a couple now, and they're one of our schools, which I don't want to bring up. It's about how they are doing this on these 9 competencies they have leaders working on. What are they actually doing so they can actually see the activity?
Yeah, so we first instituted what's kind of the minimum standard of behaviors we want to see from our frontline leaders in this organization. And so we came up with these generally 9 competencies, and we actually linked the right behavior associated with each competency so they knew how to operationalize that competence. But we all know once we teach them in that and we send them out there, the forgetting curve happens immediately and they just get about the work that they normally do. So what was fascinating about the tool that we implemented was it gave them an opportunity to actually, if I say the Babe Ruth analogy, they pointed the bat towards a behavior they're going to intentionally do. Then they did that behavior and checked off that they did that behavior. And then they journaled what the result was from applying that behavior. And we've now collected thousands and thousands of stories. So you can imagine an organization that is safety critical. And when you first see the scorecard of safety, it might not be stellar, but you start to see hundreds of stories of frontline leaders intentionally applying safety. That narrative starts to take over. And the tool allowed them to see that narrative in a positive light and get re-engaged into the score.
I call that people seeing the impact of their effort and having enlightenment.
Yes.
It's like, if I do this, I get that outcome, and that outcome is desirable. So, a light bulb goes off. Oh, I do that all the time.
That's a good
day
thing.
in, day out, all the time, right? And it's the impact of the effort. Because if they can't see the impact of the effort, there'll be no motivation or energy to continue the effort. And this is really works too.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the work that we do with people is, you did this. Did it get you the impact you want? Did it get you the goal? You did that. Did it get you this? And they if they can't link the two, they can't keep going on and on and on with the difficult behavior to get the better outcome. But once they can link the two on their own, once they can do it on their own, they get the enlightenment. They get the realization that if I go to the gym 3 times in my life in 1 week, I'm just going to be sore. But if I go to the gym 3 times a week for 30 years, I'm going to be more fit and it's a chance to transform my life. Then they'll keep the motivation. The motivation will continue. It will stagger. So good boards, good trackers show the impact of the effort.
Yeah, I'll just restate that because I love it. It was brilliant. The brain can't change what it can't perceive, and the tracker shortens that feedback loop. And I love, Sam, how you frame it. It could be daily, weekly, monthly, but whatever that right frequency is, we can improve that feedback loop. That's the right thing.
Failure, only feedback, and you can't do feedback without a tracker. And there is no failure, so it's the frame of mind you look at the tracker. There's no failure, only feedback. So you fail to reach the objective. What's the feedback to make the adjustment so you can win? That's important.
It's interesting because there are at least 2 parts of every new action or behavior or activity, right? You're trying something new. There is the quantitative, did I do it? So you get in the habit of doing it, whatever it is. And that's a huge piece. Get in the habit of doing it. Like I think about swimming. I swim during the spring and summer and fall where I live. I swim in an outside pool. And when the weather gets good enough, I start swimming outside. And every time when it takes a while to me get back in the routine of swimming again, right? I much prefer to run, but swimming is great. But at first it's just get into the habit of swimming. And then it's, so quantitatively, am I doing it 2 or 3 times a week, every week? And then it becomes, how do I improve qualitative? Am I doing the strokes right? Am I breathing right? Am I doing whatever? And it's amazing how I can increase my speed in the pool by 20%. Over a few weeks, because I've gotten in the habit again. Now I'm focused on, am I doing it right? How can I get better at it, right? So there's a quantitative piece. How do we get people to do this? And then we look at the quality. How do we improve the way we do it, right? But you're never going to get quality without quantity. I love in James Clear book, Atomic Habits, when he talks about what is the difference between Olympic athletes and everybody else. He said Olympic athletes, the single biggest difference is that they can do a small thing over and over and over and over again until they perfect it. And they do it again and again. And most of us just can't do that. We just can't do it over and over again. And that's really what we're talking about, is these small things. Making those 40 calls every day, no matter what, whatever it is. Making that check on that machine, that piece of equipment, that part, every single time. Checking that patient and doing the 5 things you need to do every time with a new patient. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's quantitative first, make sure we're doing all the pieces. Then how do we get better at those pieces? And as people see what everyone else is doing, they're going, oh my gosh, if Sam's doing that, if Rick's doing that, I can do the same thing, right? And that's the power of this huddle, this agenda in the huddle, where everybody reports every week about what they say they were going to do, how did they do, where do they need help, right? We're reviewing the goal. The power of that, where people can learn from each other, is frankly incalculable. Because it's not just me relying on how am I doing, but how's Rick doing, how's Sam doing, how's Danae, how's Han, how anybody on our team, right?
Ken, a great transition. So, what we're saying is the tracker makes progress visible, but visible to who, right? Like a tracker in a drawer is just a diary. When we talk about card 36, that's kind of where the tracker meets the huddle, the clear meeting. Sam, if you walk me through a clear meeting, if I'm a fly on the wall, what do I see in those meetings?
Well, the first thing you see is the board. So you see some kind of scoreboard with the team's goal at the top and how they're doing, how they're pacing, right? And it's one big goal that everybody has. And then they have each individual and their goals broken down. And then you have the days in the what their goal is to daily and weekly, and then what the root behavior is to accomplish that goal. And then so typically a meeting might start off where here's how we're doing as a team. We had $100,000 in revenue that we wanted to accomplish last week because our monthly goal is 400,000. Last week we want to do 100,000. At 80, we're 20 under, and we're paid. So we have to pick up some ground, guys. What do you think? And then each individual stands up and says, here's my commitment last week. Here's how it impacted my goal. And here's how it impacted the team goal. And this is what I'm going to do next week. And everybody goes down and everybody reports on the progress they made, good or bad. And the leaders of the board clearly are leaders, and the people who are last are clearly last. And you don't have to say anything. The people that are last are not going to be last. They know clearly that they're performing below. They're going to improve or step up their game. And the interesting thing about this is, as people reporting collectively on the team's results and individually, what happens is that you need to do it like Kent was talking about, qualitative and quantitative. You need to do it with excellence. We need to do it consistently and then do it with excellence. And as you do this, everybody will be really, it's going to normalize accountability. And then what will happen is you'll get people will help some of the best people on your team, will help some of the people that are struggling, and you'll get peer-to-peer and help. It's going to be all transparent. It's all going to be out in the open. And in these meetings, the rules you follow are you don't demean people in public, you praise in public, you reprimand or correct, and and then you use positive reinforcement to reward people who keep their commitments. And what happens is the culture starts to shift. The psychology of this meeting shifts. And what tells you have a really good meeting and a really good team dynamic is when the leader no longer runs the meeting, individual players on the team run the meeting. Because inevitably you're going to have the leader go out. They're going to take time off, and someone needs to, because these meetings need to happen come hell or high water, same day, same time, same day of the week, every single. And when the leader's on vacation that week, someone has to, and you practice everybody running the meeting, and that builds leaders. So it's a nice little dynamic that really makes the difference. Ken, do you have any addition? Like, you're very familiar.
Well, what I
Rick,
find is when I love what you're saying,
and
it's very implicit. So I want to make sure it's explicit. When we're talking about people missing the goal, if they didn't do it, it's not, for example, in your sales example, hey, my sales were off 10,000 last week, right? It's how many calls do I need to make that I didn't make, right? Or what are the actions or behaviors that get me that outcome that I'm going to focus on? That's what I want to know. Don't tell me about the outcome, the result you're going to get differently. Tell me what you're going to do differently, right? So if I'm in manufacturing, what are you going to do differently on the machine? Well, I'm going to make this check and this process every single time. Or if I'm in healthcare, I'm going to do this with every single patient I talk to. If I'm in banking, I'm going to do this with every single customer. So in other words, they focus on the behaviors or the actions that are going to get them the outcomes. We mentioned the outcome. Hey, the outcome's important, but let's back up a few steps. What are the things that get you that? And that's what I want to hear about. And that's what we want to focus on, is if someone's not getting the outcome or the result they're wanting, what are they doing or not doing? And that's where you learn from each other in this huddle. Because I hear, oh, Sam's doing this, this, and this. Oh, I could do that. Or it's like, I can't do that, but here's what I could do. Great. So what are the actions and behaviors? Otherwise, people just get freaked out about the goal all the time. Well,
what happens is you beat a drum. What you want to avoid is beating a drum that says, sell more, like you're working on a slave ship.
Exactly.
And it talked about this detail that I missed is really important, and that is needs to be around the root behavior that produces the goal that is within your control.
Exactly.
Individually, your control. Because if it's not, it's just creating stress response that's not needed.
Exactly.
It's creating pressure that will destroy and demoralize teams' culture and their emotions, right? So this is like, what do you have control over, and what are you going to do about it, and how's it going to impact the goal, right? It's the focus is on the behavior that produces the goal, not the goal. It's on the behavior. You're right on target right there.
Here's what I said, Sam, is psychological safety is there. It's inherent. Accountability and safety are not opposites, right? I think the highest performers are high on both. So if I say high accountability plus low safety, That's what you talk about. That produces anxiety, hiding. But the opposite is high safety plus low accountability is comfortable, but there's no results. So we need both to be there, right?
Yeah, it's like BYU American cross country coach. She has this trick she uses. She calls it high love, high expectation. That's where the optimum performance is. High love by high expectation. And that's where great accountability lives, right? That's where people working hard.
I was just thinking the clear meeting is designed to sit in exactly that quadrant.
Yes, that would be perfect. Perfectly said.
What I find interesting, again, we talk about ordinary leaders. Nothing here requires charisma. Like it could be a piece of paper with check boxes, a 20-minute weekly meeting, but there's consistency. We have ordinary leaders, extraordinary results, and the entire mechanism can fit on one page here.
It's amazing the value of that. If you know every week you're going to have to return a report, and we've all experienced this. And there, you know what? There's been many a Friday night where I thought I was done for the week. And I thought, Monday morning at 8:30, I've got that meeting with my team, and now I've got to return a report on how I did with those actions and behaviors. You know what? I have stayed late on more than one Friday night trying to finish that up because I knew I was going to have to report first thing on Monday morning to the team, and I did not want to be embarrassed. So it wasn't just on the output, the result, but did I do those actions? Did I exhibit those behaviors? Whatever it is, right? And the power of that is it's so amazing. This simple idea of just returning and reporting. How'd you do? What'd you say you were going to do? Where's the goal? What'd you say you were going to do? How did you do on it? And where do you need help? This idea of if we make it safe to ask for help. Hey, where do you need help? Hey, I need help with X, Y, and Z. I'm doing this, but apparently I'm not doing it well. So I'm getting the number, but apparently I'm not doing them as well as I should be, right? So the value of learning from each other and just being able to say, hey, it didn't work and I need y'all's help. And when people step up and know, hey, we're a team, we're in a huddle together, we're going to help each other get better. It's not a competition, not with each other. It's amazing how that makes a difference.
So I love, Ken, you talked about the cadence, the consistently having that cadence. In your guys' experience, how long before the cadence starts running itself?
6 weeks.
Something you said.
I see it.
Tell me, that's a great number to throw out.
I see things changing after 6 weeks. It needs to be long enough, actually really changing after 90 days.
Yeah.
But you start seeing the benefits of it after 6 weeks.
It's kind of why we do that 12-week program, right?
12 weeks. Well, and one of the things you said, Sam, that I like is this idea of once you get in the habit of doing this every week, no matter what. And what we say is if you're on vacation, fine, but barring that, you don't miss. You make it. And everybody, sometimes, and if you're traveling for work, you send a peer to report for you, right? But when people know that I'm going to have to return a report every week about what are the things I said I was going to do, what did I do, how did it get me the outcome? And if it didn't, what am I missing? Hey, guys, I need help. What do you think? What can I do better? And we're all doing that together. It's so valuable. But the other thing you said, Sam, which I like, is that you take turns leading that, not just the leader leading it. And leader, you go last. You don't go first. Leader, you go last, right? And let everyone else tell theirs, and then you tell yours. Now, you can go first if you want to, but the sooner you can get to where someone else is running that meeting, the better off you are. And we just rotate. Let everybody take a turn, be in charge. Hey, what'd you say you're going to do? How'd you do? How are we doing on the goal? And then go through, and everybody reports. It becomes a we thing, not a me thing.
It's interesting. You have dynamic leaders, and they're working their butts off, and they're inspiring everybody every day. And then they take 2 weeks off, which is needed for their balance and family vacation, and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. Well, it goes to hell in a handbasket. People aren't there doing the routines. So one of the things we need to understand as a leader is that I need to build my bench strength so that when I take time off, we don't lose a beat. Matter of fact, that things get better when I'm gone because everybody's a little more their edge, they're a little more on their toes because the boss is gone. So, but that doesn't happen if you don't train your people. If you don't train and coach them to be able to run a meeting quickly with a nice solid agenda and reporting and with commitments and it's really healthy and transparent for a group.
When I hear this, I think of a lot of the leaders I've coached, and I wonder, one question that they might ask us is, what if we show up to that meeting and somebody's got the tracker empty?
Oh.
Like, what do I do in that moment?
That's a great thing. That needs to be That needs to be sort of uncomfortable for somebody. But you don't do it in a way that's demeaning to them. What you do is you focus on the people that fill the tracker out, you praise and reward them, and you ignore the people who don't fill it out. That's what you do first. If they don't fill it out over and over and over again, then you have a clearing conversation with them individually. And you say, why aren't you keeping your commitment to fill the board out?
You know, it reminds me of a story. Years ago, we have a friend who was doing some, it wasn't the three of us, but a friend who used to work with us was doing some of this work with a large organization that it was in South Florida, and they actually had multiple locations, and they had just started this process. We were doing this process with them. And the first week, the executives from each location were together. There were like 6 or 7 of these guys around the table. And the CEO said, okay, how'd you do with what you said you were going to do this last week? And every leader said, man, it was a crazy week last week. I'm sorry, I didn't do any of the things I said I was going to do. I apologize. And he said, okay, at the end, and the leader was really kind of demoralized that they'd had this huge meeting and offsite, and I thought it was going to be great. And it wasn't. No one had done anything. And these were all executives running multi-million-dollar businesses. And they'd failed. And they hadn't done anything. And he said at the end, okay, are you clear on what I'm expecting from you? That you're all going to do these things you said you were going to do, and next week you're going to come back and say you did it. Yes. He said, I'm not here to demoralize anybody, demean, but hey, you're executives. You're running huge pieces of our business. The next week, second week of doing this, same tune. Hey, boss, I was out of town a couple of days, didn't get it done. And someone else said, hey, my kid had a ball game, whatever else. They had all these excuses why they didn't do it. And these are people that are really CEOs. They're not called CEOs, but they're all running multi-million-dollar divisions of this company, right? And the CEO thought, I don't know what to do here. This is crazy. He finally, our friend said, he actually took off his glasses, set them on the table, and he said, hey, y'all know that I love you, right? All 6 of you. And you're essential to our success in the business. But what I'm seeing now, week 2, with none of you having done what you said you would do, is we have an integrity issue. And he said, I can put up with a lot of things, but I can't put up with an integrity issue. If you say you're going to do it and you don't do it, and all of you were like, that's okay, he said, I'm going to miss you. But I'm going to find people who can do what they say they'll do. And now that was an executive level, and I'm not advocating that you do that. Who were not doing what they said they would do. Now, I would never do that with your team at a front line or a middle level. You pull those people off and talk to them individually. But when everyone had failed and they somehow thought that was okay, he said, that is not okay. This is an integrity issue now. You're not doing what you said you would do. And it was fascinating to see that never happened again, right? Because he hadn't really called them on the carpet. And there are levels of people and times when maybe that's what you have to do when everyone's blowing it off, right? And I'm not advocating that you do that, but it worked. And ultimately, they were senior leaders who knew better. They just didn't really think it was that important, apparently.
Yeah. And held accountable. Right. I like the way you described that because he was honest. He said, this is an integrity thing. And he didn't demean anybody. He's like, but it was very uncomfortable. And sometimes when people don't do what they say they're going to do, they lose power, and they need to know there's a consequence for their action or inaction.
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant example. Yeah. If we think of kind of one thing to close to land this episode, Sam Kent, what would you share?
Track your progress and hold yourself accountable. That would be achieve your goal, track your progress, and hold yourself accountable. And it's okay to hold other people accountable, but it's better when your peers hold you, when peers hold their peers accountable.
Yeah, I would agree. The word that comes to my mind over and over again here is consistency. Consistency. Are we just meeting weekly? On a manufacturing floor, it's actually maybe meeting daily, right? Daily at the beginning and the end of the shift. How did we do? What do we need to do better? And so this idea of consistency, because we did this really, really well a few times, but it's amazing how quickly it gets off track. You miss once. In fact, how long does it take to break a good habit? It takes about twice. And, James Clear talked about this years ago. He said, people often ask me, how long does it take to create a good habit? And most people say, 21 to 30 days or whatever. And he said, you never miss twice. He said, if you miss once doing something you said you were going to do, whatever that commitment is, right? And let's say that you commit to do this thing every single day. He said, you can miss once, missing it on a day. But if you miss twice, there's over a 90% probability you'll never do it again. And that's really what we're talking about here, that don't never miss twice. You might miss once because, the thing blew up, the plant, the hospital, whatever else, but you never miss twice. Because if you miss twice, you won't go back. You'll be starting over again. So I would just say consistency, even if it ends up being very, very short, just some consistent thing. That consistency is the key, absolutely the key.
I love it. Today we talked about 2 tools. Neither requires you to be a different person. So if you're an ordinary leader listening, build 1 tracker this week, maybe 3 behaviors max, and put 1 reoccurring 20-minute meeting on your calendar before Friday. Try it. The tracker makes progress visible, and the meeting makes it matter. So on behalf of us at Clear Performance Coaching, we hope you have a good week, and we invite you to check out again our website at www.clearperformancecoaching.com. And also, we'd love to invite you to ask us about our Clear Performance Academy. With that, take care.
Have a great day. Thank you.